Welcome back. And I would like to introduce our five next and last speakers. Good morning to all of you. We are going to talk now about the role of industrial R&D in innovation ecosystems. So back to the conference title about innovation cohesion. So I'll start by introducing you, and then we'll get right into an interactive debate. So we are joined now by first Ulla Engelmann, your Acting Director for Network and Governance at DG GROW, European Commission. Another representative from the European Commission is Apostolia Karamadi, your Head of Unit for Research and Innovation Actors and Research Careers at DG Research and Innovation, so also at the European Commission. Anna, you were with us before, but I'll introduce you again. Anna Stenstam, you're the CEO of CR Competence. We're also joined by a representative from a large company, Magnus Fredriksson, your program manager at Alfa Laval, headquartered in Sweden. And finally, Sotiris Kokinos, you're the CEO of FEAC Engineering, and you're joining us from Greece. Again, welcome to the five of you. I'd like actually to address the first question to you, Ulla and Apostolia. We hear more and more about innovation ecosystem. This is not a new notion, but there is that feeling that it's rising on the EU policy agenda. Why is that? Why do you think it's important to look at the innovation landscape and innovation capacity through the lens of ecosystems? Ulla, do you want to start?
Okay, I can start.
You're coming to with two different perspectives, so that's why it would be good to have you both addressing this question. So you're coming from DG GROW, so more from the industrial perspective. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And we have two notions of ecosystem. We have the innovation ecosystems in order to which will be probably more in detail explained by Leah, but we also have industrial ecosystems, and we have identified in the latest industrial strategy 14 industrial ecosystems. And the ecosystem notion has been come up because it was seen that we need to look larger than before, where we looked, for example, at strategic value chains. But we really see we need to look at the different parts of an ecosystem. And of course, innovation players are a very important part of the ecosystem. But on the other hand, you need to have this holistic view, meaning you need to look at the different businesses, you need to look at the social partners, you need to look at the innovation actors, but also at public authorities. So that's why the approach is much larger. And also when we did, particularly as a follow-up of the crisis, we did an analysis. The ecosystems were affected by the crisis very differently. And that's why we needed this data, let's say, also quite quickly. We couldn't rely on the usual waiting for the effects. You get statistical data 2 years later. So we needed to reach out to the different ecosystem players to get the effect of the crisis, to be able to analyze what's happening in the ecosystem, but then also for the recovery, to propose measures, you need to have access to the different ecosystems. So that's from, let's say, the industrial ecosystem approach where I come from, and then maybe my colleague Leah would want to comment on the innovation ecosystem.
Go ahead, Apostolia, if you want to bring the perspective from DG Research. In fact, the definition of ecosystem could keep us busy for a while, but what is your perspective on this?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here with you today. Good morning, everybody. Indeed, from a research and innovation perspective, Europe enjoys a high degree of competence and qualification. We have excellent researchers, we have excellent infrastructures, We have a wealth of data and knowledge produced in multiple domains. At the same time, we still have many challenges that we need to address. For example, compared to other areas which are very competent in research and innovation, the global investment in research and innovation in Europe still needs to reach the 3% target of GDP. We have a heterogeneity in Europe, and therefore there is a need to increase access to excellence across the continent. We also have many, for example, infrastructures whose use is not optimized and whose access needs to be better organized. So these are challenges we need to address within research and innovation. At the same time, there is an increased attention to how research can bring solutions to the society and to the economy, and how we can bridge research to the single market and in the industrial strategy presented by Ulla earlier on. We know that growth comes at ecosystem level. We need to promote place-based growth, and therefore addressing issues only from the top down is not good enough. We need to be able to promote measures that can support place-based growth, and therefore the ecosystem level. An ecosystem can have a very broad definition. Ecosystem includes a network of actors that interact together, and they can actually promote value creation, they can promote growth, as they can promote skilling of the society and so on, depending on the objectives. In the case of innovation, of course, we're looking into bringing results from research into the economy, bridging between research and industrial policies, if you wish. And this has occupied greatly the ongoing policy discussions on the new European research area and how it can support innovation. And the attention to the ecosystem level has been brought to the forth again. Of course, it's not a new concept, but with a new, a more improved approach and methodology, maybe. In other words, many initiatives have been out there, especially funded by the framework programs. But the question is how we can join forces with member states, regional actors, in order to have a more structured and more widespread approach to ecosystems. The notion of ERA hubs, European Research Area hubs, has been promoted, aiming at expanding best practices across the EU and reinforcing the ecosystem so as to increase opportunities for the local actors. So indeed, just to confirm that from the research innovation side, better linking to smart specialization strategies, better linking to the ecosystem level is of top priority if we want to bring the results closer to the society and the economy.
Thank you. You've both raised a very important point, and one thing I heard is actually the fact that the innovation ecosystem lens allows to identify several types of stakeholders. So broadening the question to all of you, why does it matter? Like Anna and Sotiris, you're both representative of scientific service companies. What's your feeling? Do you feel like your type of SME has the recognition it needs to strive? And I think you need to take this one.
It is getting better.
Okay.
Is my response to this. It is definitely getting better. And I'm really happy to hear how ecosystems and networks are looked upon now. Because I think that if you are a little bit of a nerdy physics, chemistry person like myself, you know that interface is all about surface area, volume relations. And the more smaller actors you have, the larger the interface will be and the better the connections will be. So it's important to see the ecosystem having these big building blocks, but also the mortar between them. And that's where I think companies like Sotiris' and mine really comes in. It is flexible, smart, fast-moving companies and people who can adapt to these type of changes, like you mentioned, the crisis and so forth. I think that is extremely important, and that is why I'm glad that we are more recognized. But no, it's not recognized enough. I think I come from a country where there is a bit of a dualistic approach to this, where on one side, companies and entrepreneurship like ours is valued and talked a lot about and appreciated in many ways. But at the same time, large funds and structures are promoting larger, more state-owned infrastructures. And I think it's interesting and important to look at it also in countries like mine, which sometimes are brought up as an example of a good example. So I think it is very important. I think also someone said earlier today that we might not be unicorns now or in the future. But I think that we are catalysts. We're definitely helping others to become unicorns. And I have no idea how the European Commission or anyone else are going to measure and follow this, but it's important to do so. It is very important to measure what goes on with the companies that we work with, and not only with us as closed and isolated entities. So I'm happy to contribute to what the European Commission is doing when it comes to analyzing this. I think it is very, very important.
Thank you, Anna. So not unicorn, but catalyst. I think that helps us grab better what these scientific service companies are. Magnus, can I stay with you? The Swedish ecosystem is, well, we'll hear about the Greek ecosystem afterwards, but do you agree with what you've heard so far? Do you have, do you feel like Alfa Laval belongs to an ecosystem?
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here. Regarding the ecosystems, I think we have a lot of ambition here, both from startup companies, service companies, and also the LSIs and so on. But today, I think the whole system is a little bit quite immature, because we are trying to get better and better, and we don't really look into the perspective to be different. I think we need to find another solution or another structure here to get this going and to scale. And there are a lot of efforts in Sweden, and Anna, you know about this as well. And it's a lot of focus on the funding from state money and so on. But still, I guess we need to come up with another approach here to get more drive from the large companies and also from the SMEs. And in that perspective, we definitely need scientific service providers to get or to fill the gap between the need from the industry and also from the offering that those LSIs can provide.
But Magnus, is it in Alfa Laval's corporate culture to utilize this services of research infrastructures or intermediary companies, those scientific service companies? Do you do that?
I would say that Alfa Laval is a typical engineering company with a lot of product development and great ideas and a lot of patents and so on. We are curious, we are interested in new technologies. So, but again, we need to find the way how to work and how to utilize those opportunities that are coming up here. And working with LSIs, it's for us in a more pragmatic way, it's kind of new. We have done some experiments. We are trying to learn how to benefit from the LSIs. You know, we have Max 4 and ESS just next door here. So, for us, we need to develop a new way of working and have come up with a new, I would say, approach. Because again, we are a company and we are looking for the value of using LSIs. And as long as that we cannot find a solid business model, it's really hard to motivate. But we are trying hard, and we have the ambition to be more engaged in working with LSIs and, of course, scientific service companies or providers.
All right. I see there are a few questions starting to come in the Q&A function next to the live you're watching. So just keep sending them. Okay, I will take a few in just a short time. But before I do so, you've raised an interesting point, Magnus. It's actually a bit of a reality check as well. The use of scientific service companies is not yet well spread. So what can be done to better integrate such companies, the added value in large companies' value chains? What can be done? So Thierry, you haven't yet come in. What is it in your experience? But it's a question for you all. Here it's clearly a change of culture that needs to happen.
Well, if I may comment from my side, in Greece, it's getting better. Not as much as we would like, but it's getting better. We begin receiving the recognition, as mentioned before, but again, every time we need to spend a lot of effort in order to make our clients or potential clients to understand what we provide, what would be the advantages of trusting us on providing our services. Every time it needs a lot of time in order to come to a final decision from their side. In the previous years in Greece, there was a huge financial crisis. A lot of lessons were learned from the big companies. There are not many big companies in Greece. We are not having so much big industry, but again, there are some very well known in the European market. We try to approach them. They also learned that they need to trust SMEs like us, to trust companies that provide high added engineering services and the scientific services, because they are the companies that provide them the innovation. They will help them to come to the forefront of the innovation and finally to the competition of the global market. For us here, based here in Greece, the difficulties are, I would say, a little bit more in number. And what I mean on that, it means that being based on the southeast part of Europe, we need to be close to the European market. So that means that we need to invest money on participating on exhibitions taking place or conferences taking place in the Europe. While when being here in Greece, as I said, we need a lot of effort to convince the companies to trust us. Saying that, a final comment, just to sum it up, it is difficult to make people understand what we provide, but at the end of the day, only through companies like us, like Anna's company, will be able to reach the technology and the innovation market, the increase of the technology and the innovation.
All right, so it sounds to me like, well, both your companies and Anna's are somehow still suffering from a lack of visibility. You may disagree, and if you do, it's now the time to say it. But I do have a question about what to do about this lack of visibility. So broadening the question, do you think that having a policy framework around innovation ecosystems could help? And it could be a policy framework that is either at regional, national, or European level. Does that help at all, or do you think this is this bridge between large companies and research infrastructures need to to be a bottom-up approach?
I have two perspectives on this. I think I believe very much in the fact that I am not visible enough it's on me. I mean, if I want to have clients, I need to sell. So I think I need, it's quite simple in a way. It's selling and delivering and, getting recognition based on that. So I think in one way, this is up to us very much. And I think if I don't have Swedish clients, then I can go to another country. It doesn't have to be here close to me. I don't have to work with European countries. Sorry about the European Commission, but I don't have to. So I think that's, you know, it's very much on our own hands. And I think a lot of us are doing a lot, and we're doing quite well, you know, right? I mean, really, we're doing really good, some of us. But yes, I do believe it's important to have a good framework where this is recognized, where we are asked about our opinions about new structures, so that, you know, not mistakes are done that would really hindering other people, other new companies entering this market. Because there are two perspectives. I'm doing fine because I've been doing this for 16 years. I have clients, I have testimonials. But if I would start a company now, then I would look about what is going on. What are the big frameworks? Are these type of companies, are they wanted, or are the governments doing something else to sort of make this challenging? And I think that is what is important. It's important to have these frameworks and to include our type of companies, so that we can come in with our experiences from different type of interfaces and provide what is our experience of best practices.
But then, Anna, in your own experience, has the government framework helped or been challenging for you? If you're saying that you may go and work with customers elsewhere.
Well, I'm actually quite proud. We have never had any so-called soft money. All the money that we have gotten in is because clients have paid us for our work. So in that way, I'm quite separate from what is going on in terms of that. For a couple of years, we were quite badly affected because the Swedish government gave less money to the institute, and then the institute had to be a little bit more aggressive in its sales, and then the institute started to be an unfair competitor, I would say. Now that has changed again, because these things change with the governments and everything else. And it's not that I am afraid of competition, not at all. I just think that it should be fair. So in Sweden, yes, there have been some challenges. I personally and my company has not been so much affected, but we are looking out for what's going on, and we are trying to defend our market, definitely.
What about the others? Do you want to react to?
From my side, just I agree with Anna. The opportunities are out there, and it's up to us to find them. Regarding the framework, it is likely now the time that finally at Greece takes place a framework called Greece Industry 4.0. It took maybe in the rest of the Europe, you are already familiar with Industry 4 and all that stuff. In Greece, we are a little bit back, but now at least finally we have now a national framework. It's called Greece Industry 4.0. They asked for our opinion. They are waiting for our contribution. So I think that regarding the Greek market, it is up to us now to find the right opportunity and the right way out to the market.
Apostolia, Ola, how does that sound to you? A bit of a reality check for you, seen from Brussels.
Yes. So first of all, thank you very much for all these inputs. I mean, I didn't mention it before, but of course, for us, this is an opportunity to gather the views of the stakeholders, and we take them very seriously. Because we're here to offer services to the citizens and companies, for example, in this case, rather than the opposite. I wanted to clarify that the policy framework includes funding and investment, and this is very important. Nonetheless, experience and evidence has shown that investment on its own is not enough if it doesn't come with the right framework conditions and the right practices in place. With that, I don't mean a very interventionist approach, but rather what we're used to doing in Europe, which is joining forces to exchange best practices, identify good patterns, and try to expand this across Europe. I think the example just mentioned by Sotiris is a good example of using a best practice or a policy initiative, for example, at European level, and seeing how this can be adapted to the national reality and even the regional reality. The other point I wanted to make is that, as I said before, we are convinced that growth is stimulated first and foremost at the ecosystem level. So the place-based growth and addressing the regional or the national market is, of course, a priority. Of course, this does not prevent even European level services, for example, of course, but nonetheless, most companies are concerned by these markets. So this is something that, of course, is we do understand and promote. Some measures, some policy measures, sometimes they are so well intertwined in the national or regional ecosystem that even they are taken for granted, such as, for example, the single market, or what I was saying before, exchanging best practices, bringing policies from national levels to European levels, or the other way around. So I think the most successful policy framework is that where different policy frameworks work together in Europe. This is Europe after all, through the exchange of best practices, understanding, mapping the best practices, modeling them, and then trying to expand these, of course, on a best effort basis across Europe for the benefit of companies and citizens. I think this is the approach that we're trying to promote. And of course, it is not trivial and easy to be able to combine this top-down, bottom-up approach, so the ecosystem level where the real growth is, and trying to see how the policy frameworks can actually offer and facilitate this ecosystem. So this is an ongoing effort that we have on our side, and this kind of exchanges and dialogues is very enriching indeed.
Ulla, from what you heard today, do you identify best practices that you hadn't in mind until today?
I think one of the best practices to be used, but which is also part of a policy framework, are existing networks. Because it was very much said that you need to have the links. Funding on its own won't help. You need to have the right connections. You need to find yourself in the right environment. And for this, there are different kinds of networks which are particularly in Europe there to help SMEs. So on one hand, we have the Enterprise Europe network, which is there to provide services to SMEs. So I think as you are, let's say, scientific service provider, my advice would be see who is your local EN hub, connect with them, and or maybe you are connected, and make it clear to them that you are also kind of service. And as they are providing services to others, then you, let's say, figure on their service menu. Another area are industrial clusters.
Ulla, sorry, I need to challenge you on this. So if Magnus, you can come in here. If you're a large company, do you go to that kind of European enterprise network if you have a specific need in terms of measurement?
Yeah, of course.
All right. And have you?
Okay.
Thanks,
but it's more for SMEs. No, the EN is mainly for SMEs, but there are other business organizations who also have more reach out to the larger companies, like industrial cluster. And this was the second one I was coming to.
Go ahead.
It depends very much which network you have to use. There are different networks, but also we hope that these networks we are fostering to work more and more in synergies. So I think using industrial clusters, and also, for example, in Greece, we know there are some very strong clusters who still are evolving and reaching out to companies. And I would also be very interested whether you are in contact with these industrial clusters and how were your experience, same for Sweden, of course. So because for us, this is also, as you said, a reality check. And then just one last point, because we talked about the single market, and the single market for goods, we know, is working quite well. Of course, there were interruptions due to the crisis, but the single market for services, we are looking into what are barriers, what can be made better. So this kind of experience is also very helpful in view of improving the single market for services.
But the CAROTS project is offering yet another network. So is it just a multiplication of networks? Should they just capitalize on existing network? What is your recommendation here, Ulla?
They should link with a network, because as it is very specific, they should link with a network, they should bridge to the network, and particularly, as it was said, you are catalyst, you are translating the needs of SMEs. So I think the best thing is to hook up and to become part of bigger networks, or that the networks reach out to you. So I think it's a way of connecting. And if we look at, particularly now for the recovery, we need to do our utmost to have access to technologies, to infrastructure, to use our infrastructures. So I think we can't have enough of trying to foster it and for our European competitiveness. And so that's why I think it's important.
Sonia.
Yes, thank you. So indeed, in addition to what Ulla just explained, so I would like to make the distinction between existing networks that aim at providing the services that Ulla just explained and basically connecting, and also networks which may have to be implemented spontaneously, taking into account the scientific knowledge that needs to be created, circulated, or used. For example, we see that very often in the context of technology or research infrastructures, data may be created by a given infrastructure or multiple infrastructures, and maybe for the needs of a specific service, we need to network different type of entities or actors or accessing data from different sources. And therefore, there we have a network which has science at its base. So speaking from a research innovation perspective. So my message is one does not prevent the other. On the contrary, they're complementary.
Good. I have a question for you, Anna and Sotiris, from the audience. I'm going to read it out. Is the use of state-of-the-art tools an issue, specifically for X-ray and photon sources? I assume these are located at universities or research centers. Is the use then distorting the market, as beamline is limited and can only be made available for a small fraction of the total time? Do you know how to address this question?
Please, Anna, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, there were many questions in one, I think.
Yes.
But I mean, to my experience, a lot of these things are not used 24/7. Some, yes, are more complicated to reach than others, but then there are many places to reach them at. As I said in the previous presentation, we are very much problem solvers. So that has not been an issue for our companies. We find the techniques that we need to use and use them. And the instruments that my company uses, definitely not a problem. I mean, with a couple of weeks of planning, that's not a problem. So what's that question? It's not I mean, the advanced technologies are in our favor. They provide data that could not be provided in any other way. And that means that they are pieces to a puzzle that could be quite unique and sometimes being pivotal for the problems being solved.
Well, in our case, in our company, our main issue are the software licenses and the HPC infrastructure. In terms of licenses, it's up to us to find the budget and to purchase the licenses for 1 or more years. On the other hand, when we are in need of bigger HPC infrastructure, that's a pain for us, because in Greece, until now at least, we weren't able to use the infrastructure provided by the government. It was only available for the academia and research community, and not for the industrial companies. This is something that now is under discussion in order to change. But this affected a little bit our job, because we had to find other solutions in order to find access to HPC infrastructure.
All right. So I want to go to another topic now, the profile of researcher entrepreneurs, and also to touch upon the career prospect for researchers. We know that the reality isn't always very bright for careers around Europe when we talk about research about careers prospects. So from what you've heard so far, or from your own experience, do you think these intermediary players that are actually between large companies and the world of science can become or can be a source of stability for researchers and provide better prospects for the future?
Definitely.
Go ahead, Anna.
I want to start. I definitely think so. That's why I think that we are a type of market and company of our own. It is not easy to do what we're doing, but there are a lot of people like us who are good scientists, engineers, problem solvers, but also appreciate this way of working. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody has to start the company, but you need to be very, very custom service focused and have some other skills also in communication and so forth. So definitely, this is an interesting work career possibility. And just this month, we have hired 2 new team members, one from France and one from Hungary.
Congratulations.
And I think we are a team of 10 people from most places in Europe, so it looks like now. So I think, yes, this is definitely a fantastic opportunity for many of us. And we need also these language skills and perspectives, and not having everybody schooled by the same professors. So that is also extremely important, that we come from all over.
I fully agree with Anna, and nothing else to add. She covered everything.
I can just maybe then I can add something to myself. Because I think in our company there are several career paths. You can continue in the technology path and become better and better at, for example, small angle X-ray scattering. But you can also become better and better at project management, still having the engineering or scientific base. And you can become better and better at sales and the key account management and expectation management. So there are different ways of developing also in a company like ours. And I think that is very interesting, and that gives people an opportunity to try something new, but still in a relatively safe haven of their competence base.
How does that sound to you, Apostolia and Ulla? Apostolia, you're in charge of research careers and DG research. So how does that inspire you?
I find this very inspiring. I'm very pleased to listen to these reactions, because this is at the heart of the current policy discussions. And seeing this positive feedback is quite encouraging for us. So indeed, the challenge the precarity challenge faced by researchers as part of the highly skilled workers in the labor market is very important. Part of the problem is that many of them have expectations to continue their career within academia, and what needs to be better promoted and valorized is actually intersectoral mobility, moving towards industry, towards existing companies, and going up to value creation. But as you said, Anna, this is not compulsory. Still, in our radar screen, we see the full spectrum of the activities. This, of course, presupposes that researchers are properly skilled already within academia in order to optimize, let's say, their perspectives and better reap the opportunities. And therefore, doctoral training, for example, should also address skilling such as entrepreneurial skilling, the digital skills, the project management skills, broader research management skills, let's say, so that they can be better adapted in a company environment beyond the academic environment. This is very important. It also presupposes increased cooperation between academia and the ecosystem, the local companies or industry, for example, in order to have exchange and provide the possibility for this kind of rotation of researchers, so as companies to test and also researchers to test other career opportunities. So we're looking into these types of solutions for the future, and I'm very pleased and eager to listen more to this type of feedback and practical solutions that we can put in place in order to promote this kind of perspective. We also see a win-win situation because of course, people are at the center of service provision, especially when it comes to scientific service provision. And one of the keys to a successful company is also the right personnel. And of course, researchers probably are the best profile, let's say, to at least to meet some of the tasks and the objectives of the company. So very, very pleased to be part of this discussion. And thank you very much.
Magnus, can I come to you actually? How does that resonate with you? Because we speak about academic researchers, but we could also speak about private researchers in the private sector here.
I think this should be balanced in some way, because the top-notch research here will come from the academia in the beginning, but when it comes more applied, we can use the research front in the industry. And in a short term, I think providers are necessary, but in a long term, looking at the bigger companies, I think we would like to have this competence inside or in-house. So,
but this is not a good news for scientific service companies.
It depends on they would like to change jobs. No, I'm just kidding. Again, this is about the balance when you are designing your offering. It's a normal business and operations development here. So I think the scientific service companies or providers, they need to find their market. And for SMEs, I think that will be a good market, but for larger companies, I guess, I don't know, but I think in the end, we would like to have this inside, and we can provide the service ourselves.
Okay.
But that's a guess. I don't know what the future will say, but in short term, I think the scientific service providers are really important to get things going and to get things to scale.
Anna.
A comment and a highlight.
Go ahead.
The comment is that we almost only work with big global companies of the size of Alfa Laval or larger. So it does not have to be like that. And they very often have the competence themselves, but they need peers and they need to do more. So that's one side of it. It doesn't always have to be like that, but for us it is. My highlight is, you're absolutely right, Magnus. We need to be at the really state-of-the-art front, because many companies will have their own competence and their own expertise in the area. And that's something I would like now to say to Ulla and Apostolia. One important thing that has been a problem for many of us is how to keep being at that front, because at least in Sweden, we are not affiliated to the university, so we cannot apply for doing, advanced academic research for our own benefit, which is the best way of learning. And we are not patent-based, so we have not been able to apply for funds to do that either. So it is really a challenge to when you're as educated and as experienced as we are the experts. We are really the ones giving the classes. So how are we going to stay there at the edge? University academics, they are staying there because they're doing more and more science. They have PhD students and so forth. So this is, I think, a very important challenge. We can get started, but how do we stay relevant? And I think we all have our different solutions to that. But I think it's a topic of absolute high importance, and because it's one thing to establish all these companies, but we have to stay relevant. And how do we get to do that? How do we get these type of situations where we continue to learn? Of course, one thing is to employ new and newly educated scientists, but I hope there would be many other ways of looking at this as well.
So I'll let you all respond or comment to what we just heard from Anna. But on top of that, I'll add a question that just came in, or that came a few minutes ago from the audience. And the question is for Ula and Apostolia. So what about the ecosystem of EU program? We have in size regional programs, Horizon Europe, and the resilience program supported by Next Gen EU, knowledge ecosystems, research and innovation ecosystems, and we now have to get to a 4D
Recording
level.
in progress.
Isn't that too complex for the startuppers to find
Did she
their
just
way?
disappear?
I think so.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can't hear
You
anymore.
must get this question all
So you
the
can
time.
comment on my question, on my thing then.
Who wants to go first?
Yes, with pleasure, although I don't have the perfect solution. So the first thing I wanted to say, Anna, that of course you know this much better than me, the market is dynamic. Everything evolves, including companies, including all actors actually, and therefore staying relevant means also following the right path of the evolution, whatever this may mean, in relation to bigger companies, for example, in relation to expanding expertise in terms of skilled workforce, or in terms of new market segments that you may want to achieve. So this is one dimension, which of course is completely market driven. What we see from the policy dimension is the need to bring the ecosystem actors together. For example, just to stay on the specific point, you raise, we are currently very much involved in on the European strategy for universities, and universities have multiple missions. It's not just the education mission, it's also the research, innovation, and also service to society mission. And more we see universities very much engaged into the interaction with the different ecosystem actors and having an interdependency to exchange personnel and staff, to exchange knowledge for value creation, for services, and so on. So let's say that the frontiers are not clear cut, but rather there is a trend for more integration between the actors of the ecosystem. And I think this can also help because it puts everybody at the right place.
Yeah, sounds very good.
Ula, do you want to come in? I'm sorry, because I couldn't hear some of what you just said, Apostolia, and I don't know if the audience could. But I'll let Ula go on. Carry on.
Okay, so yeah, from my perspective also, I think we need also to have, let's say, a stronger opening from university towards the demand side, in the sense having more interactions between university and business, and thinking of and what you mentioned, Anna, is also particularly on the upskilling, because that is also what we have seen in the European skills agenda. There it's also and upskilling, but that for this we need to find European partnerships where companies can work together to bundle, let's say, also opportunities, because we will have in many areas high demands on and upskilling. And if we now look at your part, because their upskilling is more relevant, which means then you would need to have this contact between universities and companies in order to foster this upskilling. And this upskilling could then also, for example, be supported by public authorities, because when you also talked before on the researcher's career, that is then also incentives to keep people in the research careers. And this is something we are looking in and also be part of, because there was also the question on how do we link the different programs together. And so, for example, there is this discussion between how can we use Horizon, but it's also, let's say, all the social part which comes in, because the skilling, this needs to be combined. And for that, one way we are tackling is what we call transition pathways for the transition of our ecosystems. And there we really want to bring different players together, look at different scenarios and analyze different options. But this opens a whole other set of discussion, and I think we are already at the end of
we are at the end of this panel discussion.
This is one of the way how we are looking at synergies, and I also must excuse myself because I have to be at 12 o'clock in the next meeting.
This is fine. So. Thank you very much to the 5 of you, and I think there will be more discussions going on offline further to this panel discussion. So again, a very warm, warm thank you to the 5 of you. You raised a lot of very important points here. I think it's an invitation to carry on this discussion in whatever setting, but I'll let you go, Ulla. I know you have another meeting, so very grateful that you could join us today, and same to the 4 others.